Flyers through center. It's Michkov, left side. Comes around behind the net. Andre couldn't get it back out in front. Rizzo absorbs a hit. Puck's going to stay in the zone. Bonk is shoved from behind. Rizzo gets it down right side. Michkov trying to pull it in behind the net. It's in! Matvei Michkov able to tuck it in.
Hey everybody, it's Isaiah. Welcome to the O&B Puckcast. Before we get started, just wanted to remind you that we are brought to you by Jim South Street, down on 400 South Street, 40 years of the best cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries you'd ever want in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. So check them out at 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. And now to our show. And we are back. Yes, it's your host, Isaiah. Welcome back to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 263, brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com, Summit Adjusters, Jim South Street, and of course, now featured on the exciting new forum website, HockeyHotStove.com. Yeah, we are proud to be back with a Flyers draft preview. We have special guests. So we're going to get right to it and go to our panel. Chef B, what's on your mind? It's a fun show tonight, huh?
Yes, I can't wait to see it. I know there's going to be a little diverse opinion here. I'm probably sure of that, but I just can't wait because this is the fun part. This is where you can actually talk and it's you got a good pick until you don't have a good pick, you know. So it's fun. So I can't wait.
Board of prospects. That's what it is.
Yes.
Coming in before the intro, that's Russ Cohen there. You know that guy. Hey, the great Dan Silver joins us. What's on your mind? It's going to be your show tonight.
No, I'm super excited. We got two of the best prospect analysts out there, and we're going to be going through the lists. I'm sure that these two guys have had prospects swimming in their head for the last number of months, and we'll try and figure out a way to get it out there and see what might be some options for the Flyers.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, of course, we have Russ from sportsology.com, Locked On Flyers, Off the Post podcast. Now I think with the hockey news writing for them, right, Russ?
Was.
Okay.
Was.
Well, no, you're a prospect maven, so we'll keep you busy. And of course, we have Shane Malloy from Hockey Prospects Radio and a SiriusXM contributor. Shane, welcome aboard.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's going to be fun to talk about what the Flyers are going to do with those multiple picks in the first and second round.
Yeah, we're excited about that. We're at 6:22 and 32 for the first round alone. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Silver. He's our prospect guy here at the O&B Puckcast. Dan, it's your show.
All right. Well, I think what we kind of want to do is we'll quickly go through the top few picks, and then we'll slowly build up to the Flyers at 6 and maybe a few picks before that. And as you mentioned, Shane and Russ are two of the best prospect guys out there. I mean, the time that you two guys spend analyzing these kids is unbelievable. And so we're really happy to have you both on the show. The Islanders won the lottery. They got the first pick in the draft. I think that a lot of people are kind of assuming that they're going to take Matthew Schaefer, the very young defenseman. Do either of you guys diverge from that opinion that Schaefer's going to go number one?
No.
I don't either. When you have a defenseman who could potentially be a first pair, you just take your luck and run with it. Because it's just basing it on scarcity and supply and demand, how difficult it is to find a player of that ilk. And if you do have to trade for one or free agency, it costs you an arm and a leg. Like you're trading away your children. in that kind of maneuver. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer. Don't overthink it. Just take him and be happy.
Chef,
I have a quick question. In the event that he doesn't go one, do you see anybody? I mean, do we all agree that he's like probably the only potential true number one in this draft? First line D or first line player?
I think James Higgins could be a first line player. Now, if he's a first liner, I think he would be a winger. If he's a second liner, I think he could be a center. If it was me drafting, I would draft James Higgins. But I think Matthew Darsh is going to play it safe. And also, Shane makes a great argument. I can't argue that way out of it. But I could tell you that when Higgins came in at 186 pounds to the combine and you saw all the upper body development, teams noticed. And I think things have changed since people were sort of scouting him this year. And I think it's going to affect where he goes. He's probably going to go higher than some people have on their final list.
So both of you guys have Matthew Schaefer going number one of the Islanders. So let's go to number two, the San Jose Sharks. And it seems like, again, there's sort of a common notion out there that Michael Misa, center, is going to go number two. Do you guys, Russ, let me start with you since you just mentioned Higgins. Do you have Misa going second, and would you take him there if you were the Sharks GM?
I do think they're going to go with Misa. I had Higgins first, Schaefer second, Martone third, Misa fourth, because I'm not convinced Misa will be a center at the NHL level. But I think they're taking Misa because they're also unsure about Will Smith. So I think between those two, one of them will be a center, and then they'll be fine. And honestly, the way Smith plays with Celebrini might be the odd man out if Misa can play center, which is fine, because then he'll be a top-line winger because he already has chemistry with Celebrini. So I think that's why we're all drawing the conclusion, or at least I am, for him going second.
I think we also have to sort of differentiate between what our list is and then what a mock draft is.
Correct.
Because my list is my list, and that's what I think, what I think is the most valued player as I continue down through my list. And then a mock draft is you're just trying to figure out what that team is going to do in that situation. So they're two different things that we're dealing with, as we're having these discussions. And based on what San Jose's needs are, of course, they'd like to have the defenseman. But end of the day, if you can have the 1-2 punch of Misa and Celebrini down the middle, and you can move Will Smith to the wing so he has less defensive responsibilities, and his rear end's on the wall, and that just makes him a much more valuable player. And then they can focus on other things, because it's really difficult to get that 1-2 punch. Like, we look around the league, maybe half the teams have a number one center. Half. So, that discussion of, we always need a number one center. Well, half the league doesn't have one. So stand in line, because you may not get one in the draft, even if you're drafting in the top 10.
All right, so we've got Schaefer going one of the Isles, Misa going number two to the Sharks. Now here is where, for me, things are going to get a little bit interesting. We've got the Chicago Blackhawks on the clock at number three. They may have their two futures of the two centers of the future with Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar potentially. There's been some discussion of some different guys going number three. Maybe they want to look at a big body like Frondel or Martone to play with Bedard. Shane, I'm going to start with you. What do you think the Hawks are going to do at number three?
Well, they have a couple different options, because they can always, like San Jose, they could put Nazar on the wing and protect him that way as well, because both Bedard and Nazar are not exactly big. So there's an opportunity to bring in, like, Frondel's not tall, but he's a stocky build kid. He's going to probably play at 210. Then you could also take Denoyer, who, once he fills out, he's going to be over 200 pounds as well, probably 200, 205, and he's 6'2". So do you do that? Do you insulate him with a centerman like Frondel or Denoyer, who have really strong two-way play and off-puck play, so that you can balance your roster in that respect? Move Nazar to the wing, and then maybe Oliver Moore is your third-line center, and he uses that speed. So you have something different in each one of your center. The difficulty is if you go smaller center, like The problem is you're going to have matchup issues in the playoffs, particularly on the road when it comes to that. This doesn't matter how skilled you are, sooner or later, that size factor comes into play. So they could go Martone or they could take one of the centers. I have Martone at 3, but if I'm Chicago, I'd go get a centerman to be that is legit number 2 center that can match up. And then you can start moving guys to the wall. Because I don't think a lot of centermen necessarily have an issue moving to the wall if they're going to play with a center like Bedard. So if they say, hey, okay, Frank, you're going to go and play on the wall with Bedard. He's like, okay, great for me, right? Or, you're going to play with Denoyer or Frondel on the wall, right? So I don't think that. And then, look, if there's injuries, you can always slide people through. So you're going to have versatility in the lineup.
So, gun to your head, who do you think goes number 3?
I think they'll probably take Frondel. Him and Denoyer are the safest picks. So, but probably Frondel. He's also, if you look at what Chicago has done, they've been a little impatient with their players and brought some of them in a little bit too early. And of all of them, Frondel's the one, if you did end up bringing him in as a 19-year-old, he physically could handle it. I wouldn't recommend it, but he'd be the less likely to have a failure because of his style of play and his body type.
So Russ, I want to ask you, because you guys, I'm sure, have watched Frondel more than I have. When I watch Frondel, and it's mainly highlights, full shifts. Whenever I watch Frondel, I come away more impressed by Victor Eklund than I do Frondel. I think they're both very good players. And I did notice that, Shane, you have Eklund 7th and Frondel 5th, so you don't have a big difference between them. And Elite Prospects, who Russ contributes to, I believe has Eklund ranked higher than Frondel, and you guys had Frondel ranked fairly low. Can you talk to me about
5 and 7?
What that
is where I have it. Yeah, I have Frondel 5 and Eklund 7.
So you both of you have the same. So can you talk to me about why everyone is because I see a lot of Frondel mocked number 3 to the Hawks, and when I tend to think that guys like Denoyer and Martone, to me, look like safer bets than Frondel. Talk to me about Frondel, Eklund. What are your thoughts on those guys, Russ?
All right. So first thing is I had that same setup for one of my cats in my house, and she loves it. Second, so it took until like January for those two to play together. And it was because they both kept asking the coach, basically pestering him, until the coach finally said, okay. And it was great. I think they both feed off each other. So I don't think one is getting more from the other. I think it was just a really good combination. And sometimes you find that, so much so that I do think there's probably some teams, if they could swing it, would draft them both. But I don't know if that will happen. I will say, I think Chicago is going to go Martone. I have Martone 3rd too, but I'll tell you why. So Martone had a great interview at Chicago, and he boasted about him a lot. Chicago could use that size, like Shane said. They might go the other way too. But I do think he impressed them. And I do think that there's something there with the way that interview went. And sometimes interviews are important. There's a couple guys on this list that were horrible on interviews, and it's going to hurt them. So I think that's the case with that. But if they did go with a center, I'm sure it's Frondel over Denoyer, just because of the way things went at the combine with Frondel and Chicago, and with Frondel just physically. Like, I was legitimately shocked. Like, I took a video of Frondel doing, his vertical leap from like across the way, because I had an extra 7 minutes. Because it's a 3-ring circus. Shane's covered it more than I did. He covered it before me. And now they bring out 3-4 guys at a time. Like, it's insane. You can never cover it all. But I had a free couple of seconds there, and I took the video, and I'm like, oh, wow, the vertical leap's really good. I put it up. I have 57,000 hits, and it's still going. Like, it's crazy. But anything he did, he excelled at. And then the interviews, what's interesting is he's a guy that not everybody spoken to him very much during the year. And he impressed a lot of people. Forgetting about media, he impressed teams. And so I think that, and when you go back and look at what he did in Allsvenskan, which was impressive, except for the dopes online that say, what do you mean? It wasn't that great amount of points. And it's like, dude, look who's on the roster. Look how old these guys are. So I think it's between Martone or Frundell, and I think it's Frundell. But I will tell you that teams do value Eklund too, but I don't think he's in the conversation yet.
So you think they're taking Frundell or Martone third?
Martone.
You think they're taking Martone over
But if
Frundell?
they don't take him, I think they're taking Frundell.
Okay. So now we get to the point where I think things really start impacting.
Well, let Shane go, because I know he wanted to talk about the Frundell Eklund probably.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, I mean, in the separation between the two, one, sometimes there is a misunderstanding or not an appreciation for where players play. So you can get mesmerized by the numbers, the goals and assists and the points. So if you're playing in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, where there's very little structure, it's run and gun, players can cheat. They do cheat for points and only focus on their numbers. And then you change that, and on average, you're playing against 18 and a half year old kids. And then you look to a guy like Hagens, who's playing against 21 and a half year old young men on average. And then you have Frundell and Eklund, who are playing against actual men. So when you're looking at the statistics, if that's your barometer for a player being good, you're going to be terribly disappointed about what happens. Take a look at what the difference of what Anton Lundell brings to Florida. And that's what Frundell is going to bring, but with more offense. He may look vanilla when you're watching him, but every coach and every player that plays with him wants to play with a player like that because they're consistently on the right side of the puck. They consistently do the right things off the puck. On average, if a player plays 18 minutes a game as a forward, the percentage that he actually has the puck on his stick might be 5% at most. So what are you doing 95% of the other time when you don't have the puck in your stick? That's the difference between having a center like that on your team. And it's nothing against Eklund, because obviously I had him 7th overall, and the kid plays with a dog in the bone mentality. He's a greasy little SOB, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. However, in terms of separation, I'm always going to take the centerman. Always. In that respect, I look at a player's B game in many cases more importantly than their A game, because when things aren't working for you with your A game, you got to bring something else to the table, especially in the playoffs. And you need to have that mentality where you're just going to like gnaw on the bone the whole time. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked around, you keep coming back. And that's what Eklund has, even more so than his brother. His brother's not nearly as like competitive and nasty and greasy as him. So that's why I have that separation. But at the end of the day, I'll take vanilla boring Frundell over 95% of the centermen that are in this draft class, because I like winning, and winning is off puck play.
So Shane's got it going. His mock's got it going. Schaefer, Misa, Frundell. Russ has got it going. Schaefer, Misa, Martone, which brings us to the point where
I don't. I have Schaefer, Misa, Martone.
You do. So you both have Schaefer, Misa, Martone going 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's my list, because I haven't done a mock draft.
That's his list, not a mock.
Yeah,
we haven't done mock.
Yeah, we haven't done. We will
this
do a
is the
mock
first we're doing any kind of mocking.
We won't. Yeah, we won't end up doing our own mock for Peter, Burst, for XM, in probably another week. So I don't do a mock unless it's basically at gunpoint.
Got
so
it.
Unless
okay,
I'm
we're not going to
overpay.
Yeah. I did make a gunpoint comment tonight, but I won't make any more, and we will go down right now. We've got Schaefer, Misa, Martone, which brings us to a point that I think is really going to be pivotal to what happens with the Flyers. You know, Russ, your colleague Cam Robinson at Elite Prospects sent out a tweet or an X or whatever the heck you call it this week, saying that, or it might have been last week at the Combine, that Utah was sort of very interested and infatuated with Brady Martin. I know both you guys have him a little bit lower down on the list. Mm-hmm. Do you think, you know, I don't know the validity of that report. Obviously, Cam knows what he's talking about. Do you think that there's a chance that he goes 4th, or that they trade down a few spots? What Russ, let me start with you. What do you envision happening with Utah at number 4?
I don't think they're going to trade down. If took Martin, then I think they would trade down. I think that report is just one of those reports with GMs and everybody else playing liar's poker this time of the year. That's, it's June, they're lying. Like you have to just go with that. But what I think with Utah is I'm pretty sure they like Hagen, but like with Shane saying that, hey, they may want to vary their lineup, they may not go with them. Like they may actually not go with Hagens. They might go with Denoyer there because of that. There are other teams right after that like Hagens a lot too. So he's going to go within those 3 picks. Martin is going to go higher. I had him ranked, but I don't think he's going 4th. I think that's just one of those reports that doesn't come through.
So, Russ, who do you have? I guess you have Hagens, obviously, was at the top of your list. So
yeah,
he would be the guy here for you for Utah. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I understand that if they're looking, look, I think I'm not worried. If Hagens were to play on the line with Logan Cooley, have another big guy on the line. I'm not worried about having 2 smaller guys when they're like that. Again, Hagens is not that small anymore at 5'11", 186. And he still doesn't have his man strength, but he came in looking pretty good. Also, I need to point out that he had one of the highest point totals ever for an NTD player as a freshman in college hockey. But yet, everybody picked him apart because they just watched. But you go look at Matt Goldie, he had a better year. You go look, Matthews didn't play, right? He went overseas. But I'm just saying, if you go back and start searching it, the year was a lot better than you would think historically too. But yeah, if it were me, I'd be taking Hagens, but I understand that they might take there.
Well, Dan, the difference between what our list is and what I think a team will do, like I can prognosticate what Bill Armstrong could do at 4. I wouldn't suspect that he's going to add another smaller. Look, Hagens may be 5'11", 187, but he's still below average. NHL average as a 4 is 6'1", 205 pounds, so he's below average. He's a smaller forward. He's not, 165 pounds, but he's a smaller forward. I don't see Bill Armstrong adding another player like that when you already have Clayton Keller, and you already have 2 smaller forwards that are skilled up there already. You can't have a third and have success in the playoffs, regardless how skilled they are. They would have to be, franchise level players. I just don't see Bill doing that. I think Bill would be more likely to take a 2-way center in that spot and be able to augment his lineup, because he's at a point where he's going to start roster building, and he's not in asset collection mode anymore. Just taking best player available, which I think is a nebulous term in the first place. So if I have to guess on what Bill's going to do, if Schaefer, Misa, and Martone are gone, he'll take Denoyer or Frondell, no problem. And he'll say thank you. And that, because what that does is he has a 2-way centerman who can produce points, but also can insulate in the playoffs. So the Clayton Kellers of the world and all those players can do whatever they want offensively, because you have a line and you can balance that lineup. Because at this point, it's not just taking what the industry calls best player available. If I'm looking at his standpoint, that's what I would guess. He's gonna take a safer pick.
Chef, I'll get to you in a sec. I just want to hear Shane's. I want to hear because I'm sure he's watched Denoyer more than us, and Denoyer is kind of the guy that I'm hoping the Flyers somehow end up with. Can you talk a little bit about his game and what you think he brings, to the ice?
I think one of the most attractive things about his game is his off-puck play. I think he's a primary playmaker. So when he does play, if you're projecting him out, could he be a 25 goal scorer, 50 assists, 75 points, 80 points a year? He's going to be willing to sacrifice points to play a better 2-way game. And when we talk about Like, go through the go through an NHL season and look at the garbage Tuesday night game at home against a bottom 5 team, and you pick up 2 extra points. And how many times does that happen where all of a sudden a guy goes from an 80-point season to a 100-point season? Well, how many of those points are just these fluff points against bad teams that don't really matter in the end of the day? I'd rather have a player like Desnoyers, and I think because of his off-puck play and his diligence defensively and his willingness to play in the middle of the ice and defend in the middle of the ice, and what I really like about him is his defensive habits. He's very consistent off the puck because he's going to have to play in the middle of the ice. And I know that doesn't sound sexy to the fans, but those are the kind of players that help you win championships. And I'm not comparing to Patrice Bergeron. However, they play a very similar style of play. And Bergeron never racked up a ton of points. Like, he was never he wasn't this consistent over 100-point player. But I'd take him any day over everybody else. You can take your extra 20 fluff points. I don't care, because I need to win in the playoffs. And that's, to me, is one of the reasons why I think I wouldn't be shocked that Bill Armstrong takes him at 4.
Russ,
I don't think he's getting a Philly. I don't think he's getting a Philly.
No, I don't think so either. Desnoyers also was around 53% on faceoffs, really good on faceoffs. The thing about Bergeron that's funny, and people forget, so that first year in Boston, he wasn't that great. And then the lockout happened. So then he's in the AHL, only because of the lockout and Providence, and they allowed him to play there that year as a 19-year-old. And I covered that season, that whole season where the Phantoms won it. You know, Riley Cote, I was hanging out with him after when they won. Bergeron was fantastic by the end of that season. That playing in the AHL meant everything to his development. And that's why a lot of guys should do it because of that. That proved to me at that point how valuable that was. And it was an anomaly. Worked for him.
So, I know some people have compared him to Nico Hischier. Shane, you mentioned Patrice Bergeron. When I watched Desnoyers, one guy that also kind of comes to mind for me is Jonathan Toews. Do you think there's any similarities there between those two guys?
Certainly. Their competitiveness and their detail. Like, they're on the right side of the puck all the time. They're on the hip of the defender. They get sticks in lanes. They understand how to close. They understand which angles to take. And they're constantly pressuring players to make decisions they don't want to make, and that matters. This game is not as complicated as we like to make it out to be. It's really about creating time and space and taking away time and space. And if you can do that effectively, that's going to create offense for you. Especially for his line mates. So Wiener's going to love playing with him from that perspective. I appreciate the fact that you would want him going to the Flyers, because if I was a Flyers fan, I'd want him there too, 100%. I just don't think he's getting there. I think their options more than likely is going to be they're going to be looking at Higgins, Martin, and O'Brien if they're looking at centers. Those are, I think, are going to be the 3 available at 6.
Okay. Chef, you wanted to?
I do want to add that Jonathan Toews, in his rookie year at North Dakota, was under a point a game, but he had 22 goals in 42 games. He was pretty good. He played real heavy. He did.
So, all right, I have to bring it up because of all the rumors out there. I don't think it happens. I'm not saying it happens, but is there any likelihood of that 4 pick moving? And if so, like we talked, you hear rumors about trading up and other teams trading up. If somebody traded up, who's stupid enough to do it? I'm guessing.
Well, over time, actually, if you look at it, like, statistically, trading up is not to your advantage.
Yes.
Right? Now, it does work out, but it's a small percentage. You're better off actually trading down. So the problem is, if you look at the teams up there in the first 4 picks, none of them have any benefit of trading down for more picks, especially Utah, because they've been collecting picks for the last 4 years. The last thing they need is another draft pick. They don't need it anymore. They need to specifically target players. So I don't think anybody in the top 4 is moving down. And I don't think Nashville's moving out of their spot either. I think Philadelphia's in a situation they're going to take whomever's left over. And if their target's a center, I really think it's going to be between Higgins and Martin and O'Brien. And it's really about picking your poison and looking at your roster, looking at the players. Forget the nebulous best player available, because they're all, relatively equal in terms of overall value. They just bring different things to the table. And what are you going to do with that? And if you're looking at Philadelphia, their number 2 center is probably going to be Luchanko. Okay, of those 3, who best complements him? But also who best complements the organization in that respect too? And you're going to win in the playoffs. It's nice to get a lot of points in the regular season, but I don't think that's the goal, or it shouldn't be anyway. And if it is, you probably shouldn't have your job.
Isaiah?
Yeah, I think it would be a mammoth mistake for them to move down.
Yeah.
I very funny, Russ. So.
I see it.
Thank you. Somebody got it.
Okay, yeah.
Christ.
Okay. Denoyer, there seems to be an opinion like, okay, when he wasn't playing in the queue, and there seems to be a bias against that league because of some of the things you talked about earlier.
It's not biased. It's a fact. It's not a good structure like league.
Okay.
Shane lives in the area.
Yeah.
How did he look outside of that makes you feel as confident about his attributes translating, in the future?
Well, I mean, international play is one thing, so it's a really small sample size. But the fact when I see him play in his own league and the massive gap between the players who play off puck and who don't, and how detailed it is, it doesn't even matter what he does in his international play. It really doesn't, because you can track what he does off the puck. To me, when you're looking at players, I search for patterns of behavior, and I look at how they play in certain situations, particularly on the road, back-to-back nights against teams above 500 when they're matched up against the top defense pair, they're matched up against the top lines. How do they perform then? And does their behavior change? And if it doesn't, it says something about their habits. So then I more granularly look into their habits in specific situations. And then when I look at Denoyer, his defensive habits are so consistent for a kid of that age. So every draft year, there's always a handful of those kids, but there's not many. And he just happens to be one of them. And it's just fortunate for him, he happens to have the offensive playmaking ability to go along with it. He's just going to have to get bigger and stronger. He's a lanky kid. He'll be 6'2", and he'll probably play at 200 pounds. But so he's going to need a couple years to fill that out. So there's no rush for him to play in the NHL. But off the puck, I mean, I'm sure people who listen to my top 32 review show with Jason Bucla got tired of me talking about B game, because that's all I did about players. I was more interested in their B game, because to me, that's what translates to the NHL, because it isn't always the offense doesn't naturally translate, particularly if you're looking at the gaudy numbers that come out of the CHL.
Gotcha.
So Shane, your rankings, you've got Schaefer, Misa, Martone, Denoyer, and you've said that you think that the Flyers' decision will come down to Higgins, Martin, and O'Brien. So I guess that means that, I know you're not mocking it, but that you think there's a reasonable chance that Frondell, in your scenario, would be taken number 5 by Nashville. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, there is a possibility, and this is where it could work out for Philly. If you go back and listen to Barry Trott's talk about wanting some more high-skilled, high-event players, that could dictate and change, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to balance between Jeff Kelty's history as the director of running the draft. He's at AGM now, but he runs the draft, and then looking at that past history of decision-making, what he's done over the last decade, and then consider that the GM is going to have influence on that. Could that end up being that Higgins goes at 5 because they want that dynamic player as a centerman there? That's a distinct possibility, which opens up potentially the door for Philly to take either Frondell or Martin or O'Brien. And then that's when the debate really starts to be very interesting. If I'm Philadelphia, has nothing against Higgins as a player. I just don't think he's the right fit for the organization based on what they have and the style of play that they want, and him being a 1-2 punch with Luchanko. I don't think it diversifies your top two centers well enough for that. And he doesn't bring the level of B game that I think the Flyers require in their group. And that's why Higgins wouldn't be my choice for Philadelphia. Because my list is one thing, and then I have to take into consideration the organization that's picking at that spot.
So Russ,
I demand to rotate with Shane because he's pretty much just stole my thunder there, because Shane's right. Higgins is going to go to Nashville.
Russ, you're saying, hey, you think Higgins is going to go to Nashville?
I do.
Okay, so
and I think it's because of the reasons Shane said. They are looking for a high-end, highly skilled scorer. They're dying for scoring. Like, scorers go to die in Nashville. I don't know why, but everybody who goes to Nashville underperforms except for Phil Forsberg. He's like the only guy that performs over what you expected, and everybody else performs under when it comes to goals.
So this is personally my worst case scenario. If Schaefer, Misa, Martone, Denoyer, and Higgins are all gone before the Flyers pick, because those are the five guys I would like to end up with one of them. Obviously, it's not going to be Schaefer or Misa, but Martone, Denoyer, and Higgins are the three guys that I would be very happy with. So now let's talk about, and we talked about Frondell already, but Russ, talk to me. If the Flyers, if the first five guys we talked about go, and the Flyers have an option between Frondell, Brady Martin, Jake O'Brien. We talked about Frondell. Can you talk about, and obviously Martin and O'Brien are two very different players, but can you talk about those two guys and then the choice between those two guys and Frondell?
And I'm going to throw somebody else in the mix too, but I'm going to take Martone out of it. I don't think he'll be there, and Philly has some concerns about his skating, from what I hear. So I don't think they would take him, even if he were there. So I'm going to take him out of the convo. They did take Brady Martin out to dinner. Brady Martin is a piece of work. Like, he's physically strong. He could still pick the top corner. He skates well, and I think he could get better at his skating. I think his stride could get better. He does everything you want him to do. He's aggressive, but the thing about him is, though, I don't know how many points he's going to score in the NHL. And if you take him in that spot, and what if he only comes up with Barrett numbers and does all those other things great? It might come up a little short in the eyes of fans. It might. And maybe even the team. Jake O'Brien's got amazing vision, probably the best vision in the draft class. And when you look at Jake O'Brien, like, what was interesting and stark to me was, and people could see it on my Instagram, when he sat next to James Higgins, same shirt, like, James Higgins was already like filled out, and Jake O'Brien has the same shoulders but isn't filled out. So what's going to happen when Jake O'Brien, when he fills out? It's going to be great. And his skating's really good, and it will be better. It's not right where it should be yet. But the vision is really what's special about him. And so I do think the Flyers like him. They also like Victor Eklund a lot. And if the other centers that they really value are off the board, they could go with Victor Eklund, because they heavily scouted him. Shane and I saw their whole crew at the World Juniors. They do like him. They love Frondell. Frondell will be gone, I think. They love Denoyer, but I think Denoyer would be gone. I think Higgins will be gone. So I think now, when you're left with these other choices, I think we'll be discussing Eklund. I don't know if they'll take him, but they definitely will be discussing him.
So, all right. So it sounds like you think that Martone might be the guy who could be available when they pick. Is that, Russ? Is that correct? The guy in the top?
No. I don't think he will be. But I'm just saying, if he were, I don't think the Flyers would take him, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so you're Danny Briere, and the guys that are off the table are Schaefer, Misa, Martone, Denoyer, and Higgins. And now you have your choice of Frondell, Victor Eklund, Jake O'Brien, Brady Martin. Who do you think the Flyers and Danny Briere would take?
Frondell.
Yeah, agreed.
Shane, does that make sense to you? And I know you were talking about they wouldn't want a guy like Higgins. Do you think Frondell would be a guy that they like?
they're certainly going to appreciate his two-way game. He's highly competitive. Think of a better scoring Anton Lundell. If Anton Lundell was not on the Florida Panthers, he's a second-line center, probably pushing up 70 points and playing a really strong two-way game and being super responsible. The difference between Frondell and you're going to look and the other two centermen is Jake O'Brien. I'm trying to give you a vision of what O'Brien is. Think Mark Savard. He is a highly intelligent, elite playmaker. That's what he's going to bring. He'll be 6'2", be 195, 200 pounds, but he's all about playmaking. He's a primary playmaker, and he'll be average to above average defensively, and he's going to be the playmaker for a highly skilled winger, and he's going to be on the number one power play unit. And he could probably end up putting up 90 points a year. Could be 20 goals, 70 assists. Wouldn't shock me as a player. Now, Brady Martin, think Sam Bennett. He will change the entire organization if he walks into that Philly room. You think about old school Philadelphia Flyers, I call him the honey badger. That he will not tolerate anything that gets in the way of winning. He will walk into the room, he'll be respectful, but he will bring his A game every time. You don't have to wind him up. So whether it's his hit rates, whether it's his aggressiveness around the net, whether it's his very, very good two-way game, he's exceptionally responsible, and his grit and his character and his leadership. If you need somebody who's going to drag you into the fight in the playoffs, it's Brady Martin. If you need somebody to everyone else to look up to, Brady Martin. You want a future captain, Brady Martin. He will sacrifice 25 points a year. You're going to have to live with the fact that he may not produce as many points. Could be at the 65-point range as a two-way center because he has to do all the hard matchups. That's what's going to happen. But it doesn't matter. I talked about the 20 fluff points that ends up happening in the season that generally we don't end up tracking. I can go and watch like the fluff Tuesday game or the fluff Wednesday game, and players get an extra point, extra 2 points there, and it adds up. It makes a big difference. And all of a sudden the player goes from 65 points to 85 points, and everybody goes goo-goo over. I'm like, okay, but 20 of the points were like mush. Who cares? If I'm the Philadelphia Flyers, if I'm sitting in that chair looking at what they need for an organization, I'm taking Brady Martin. He will like.
I disagree.
You want the new orange? I'll take like there's extra points, and O'Brien will get you an extra 20 points, 25 points. Sure, no problem. Lots of extra nice assists. He's a really talented player, but I got to fit a player for an organization, what their needs are, and this organization has lacked identity for a long time. A long time. They don't have a Matthew Tkachuk. They don't have a Sam Bennett. They don't have somebody that's going to drag them into the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have somebody that's going to change the culture of the organization in the room and outside the room. He has the capability of doing that. That's who he is as a player. And I'm more than happy to sacrifice 20 fluff points in a season for a guy like that. No problem. Be happy to do it.
I have a quick thing to throw in here because what you described is not the same position. Tocchet was a winger, but that was what he provided this team when he was a player during that time frame. A little roughness, a little grittiness, go out there and do whatever it is. Does that affect the coaching decision? Because you have him as your coach now and you're looking, like you said, this team has to have some kind of identity now because it's been floating out there. They were trying to do something with Torts. Does this affect Danny and Keith's decision? And maybe even Rick now going, hey, I like that kid. Reminds me a little bit about me. I want him over somebody else so we can establish who we are. Does that work?
Certainly as well, because there's an alignment between sometimes. Look, a player like Rick Tocchet's going to appreciate the players for who they are because he's played with a variety of different styles of players. So it isn't just being a bias towards I played that way, so everybody should play that way. He's not like that. Like he's not short-sighted in that regard. but it's just a lack of what the Philadelphia Flyers have. They don't have that. Not in their farm system, not in their current roster. They don't have somebody that's a honey badger. And because they have 3 picks, it's going to allow you to mitigate risk across that first round. Regardless of what they do with their seconds, they could trade them away. I don't think it really matters in that respect. But you can mitigate some of that because they have to build down the middle. They have 1 center coming. That's it.
No, that's true.
That's
we all
enough.
agree on that.
Yeah.
That's not good enough, right? And I'm willing to sacrifice the fluff points or the extra power play points for the 5-on-5 production and the ability to shut down opposition. And because he's a kamikaze, like, he's unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do. You have no idea what Brady Martin's going to do. And he doesn't care. He doesn't, like, legitimately care. If he hurts you, he hurts you. Don't play then. That's not that's his mentality. It's not my problem. And they haven't had it in Philadelphia for a long time. And because you have 3 picks, you can get away from just taking the pure skilled guy, right? I mean, he's skilled enough to get 70 points a year in the NHL, but he's going to sacrifice because it's not – the W is more important than the fluff points on a Tuesday night. That's my argument for him.
If I want to appeal to Russ here because I know he has a contrary opinion, but I just wanted to weigh in with a little bit of a preamble. The Flyers kind of molded that what Shane is describing as a culture under Tortorella, and they have a guy even though he's not quite as mean in Luchanko, whose B game is practically his whole game at the pro level. Hopefully, it'll translate a lot better as the years go by. They've had, in the aggregate, the absolute worst power play in the league for about 8 years running, ever since they got rid of Joey Mullen. And they need somebody who can think the game with Michkov to kind of clean that up, because you can have all the grit in the world. They lack so much skill that they can't even get out of their own way, and they have to work so hard to score. It's killing them.
Well, I'll say that Shane made a lot of good points, and I don't disagree with the points he made about Brady Martin, what he could do. But I would muddy up the waters further by just saying if Frondell or Denoyer are there, they're not taking Brady Martin. Like, I'm 99% sure of that, but they may not be there. So then I do think this conversation comes up. I do think they like Jake O'Brien a lot, and I do think that's part of the argument. And I think that's why Eklund's in this conversation too, for that reason. Someone to play with Michkov, someone to fix the power play, and no one person fixes it, but to make it better. I understand Tocchet will have, his opinion, and a lot of times it's to John Tortorella when he was with Columbus, and I said, "Hey John, how you doing?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm just here to kind of just hang around." Coaches know they get a little bit of input. Joel Quenneville got up and left when one of his favorite players got traded. He left the draft in Chicago, like that was it. He was out. He never came back. So that's the coach's role, but I think. Martin is in the conversation. They wouldn't take him out to dinner, but I also think they took Martin out to dinner because all the other guys were being taken out to dinner too.
I got to push back against the lack of appreciation for Luchanko as a playmaker. Like 2 years ago, he had 54 assists in 68 games, and last year he had 35 assists in 46 games on a bad team in Guelph.
Bad team.
They're a bad team. So, when you're pumping out almost 90 assists in 14 games, you're a playmaker. Like, he is a primary playmaker. He's not a goal. He's not a primary goal scorer. He is a speed merchant playmaker, a two-way playmaker. So he's perfectly adept of being on a power play and feeding passes all over the ice. He's more than capable of doing that. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
They're going to make him shoot in the NHL. They're going to make him.
They don't need to.
Of course, everybody has.
Well, everybody has to shoot to a degree, but he's not a primary shooter. And if you as a management group don't recognize what his primary play is, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, read the reports, or maybe the reports are wrong. But he's a playmaker. So if anybody thinks he's the shooter on the power play, you might go watch some film because he's not that.
That's a given. I'm just saying, in terms of when you're talking about building the organization, if you look at gaps in the organization, the high end skill is all they've been talking about ever since Briere took over.
So, go ahead, Chef.
Okay. So you have the other two picks in any wilderness scenario. If you still see there's as you get down to 12 or 13, and one of those three guys, Eklund or whatever, or Martin's still there, do you try to jump up with your two?
Martin's not going to be there then.
Yeah. I'm just saying.
No.
You never.
Not
Is
a
there
chance.
any way to jump up? You think?
He's not going to be available then.
No.
No.
No way.
But
I'd be shocked. You'll hear me yelling on the radio on draft day if he's still there at that part. I'll be texting DMs going, okay, what drugs are you on? Like, take the
you'll
player
be saying
and
it every pick. You'll be like, well, it's going to be Martin. Well, it's going to be Martin. Well, it should be Martin. You'll say it every pick.
Well, probably, yeah. After a certain point, I will. Like, you should be, might as well just take him. Well, no, there's an opportunity for Philadelphia to mitigate this across. Like, what they really badly need in the middle of the ice are guys that, and you can talk about skill you want. The only time they're going to get any type of like really high end skill, and Martin fits that. He's willing to sacrifice it. Like, the kid can put up 70 points a year in the NHL. I don't think that's.
But he's not as skilled as O'Brien. Like, we both have to admit that.
He's not as skilled as a playmaker as O'Brien. He's
but that's a big deal.
Right, but he's a much better goal scorer. He's a primary shooter.
I know, but I'm going to just point this out. You're right. He is. But the Flyers haven't had really good playmaker. Now, Luchanko is going to be one, but they haven't had him in years since Giroux and Voracek, and they are missing that in their organization. Like, they're missing that too. They're missing a lot of stuff, though, Shane.
I want to ask.
I build down the middle. I think I prefer centers like they're out of control.
I think I prefer Martin to O'Brien, but you guys have watched them more than I have. Here's one of my concerns with O'Brien. Again, this may be completely off base. Morgan Frost was an exquisite playmaker in juniors. He averaged 1.7 points per game in his draft plus one season. I know obviously that's different than his draft season. I have some concerns because I know that Jake O'Brien, there's some concerns about the pace that he plays with, which was kind of what sunk Morgan Frost in the NHL. Obviously, Frost was not as highly touted as a prospect coming into the draft as O'Brien was, but I think Frost's draft plus 1 year kind of shot him up a lot of lists. He put up a lot of power play points. I think he's a great passer. He's a good playmaker. Russ, what are the differences between O'Brien and Frost?
Okay. So first thing, I don't want to say Frost is shot in the NHL because I don't believe it. And actually, when he left the Flyers, he was pretty much their best face-off guy too. Like, he's really improved on face-off. What's different is O'Brien just has like this vision that even Frost doesn't have. We saw like these flashes from Frost, and he could see some things and some gaps and seams that other guys wouldn't. But O'Brien's different. O'Brien sees it way before Frost does, and he processes it way before Frost does. And so that's the big difference there. And O'Brien knows it. Like, if you talk to him about it, he'll talk to you and tell you why he does it, how he does it. And again, he makes that decision as a quick read on the ice because I asked him about it. He's not looking at film. He's not doing anything. He's going up the ice, and when he sees what's there, then he's just doom, bang. That's it. He's making that decision. It's not something he's thought about. It's something that's instinctive, and it's more instinctive than Frost. That's my opinion.
Brady Martin seems like he has a lot of Mike Richards in him to me.
Yeah.
Is that a decent comparison?
Yeah. Mike Richards, the Sam Bennett's of the world, those kind of players, they're going to drag you into the fight. He's going to be a team captain. Like, I understand the argument for O'Brien. If Philly didn't need this so much, I'd go, sure, take the playmaker, take the Mark Savard of the draft, because that's what O'Brien's going to be. 6'2", he's going to be a little bit lanky, 195, 200 pounds, but just a sublime passer, like, because he can make fantastic plays. Pace will increase. The problem with junior hockey is that you don't necessarily have to play at a high pace, and you can play. Play a lot of minutes, and you got to pace yourself, and you're on the ice every second shift, and it doesn't replicate what's going to happen at the NHL level. And obviously the strength he's going to add is certainly going to make his skating and his pace better. And he'll have no choice but to increase his pace to play at the NHL level. I'm not concerned about that. My position is really based on what the organization needs. And I think they need an O'Brien more. I think they need a Martin more than they need an O'Brien at this stage.
Well,
if they got a different, if they had drafted a different center than Luchanko, then my answer could have been different. If they would have if Luchanko was a different player, he was more attuned towards a Mike Richards, Martin kind of a player, then I would have swung the other way to balance it out. But they don't have that. So you're going to get two other playmakers down the middle that are not like Luchanko. Thankfully has the speed and he's got some like get up and go in him, but you're not going to get anybody like a Martin outside of the top 10 that can play on a second line.
So choose Jake O'Brien's average for power play time was 4 minutes and 56 seconds.
Yeah, he never left the ice. He never left the ice.
That's insane, guys.
He's on a power play for 2 minutes straight. And they just rotate guys around him, and he just floats around.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
now, two other things that I had to go back on my notes and look at. 40% on defensive zone starts, according to Instat, which is really good for Jake O'Brien. Doesn't really get talked about. And his escapability. He's got really good escapability, too. And he draws penalties. He does draw penalties. So does Martin, though. Martin does, too, obviously.
So I want to talk now about, because the Flyers, obviously, are pick number 22. They've got pick number 31. They also have 4 picks in the second round. I'm guessing that they may end up trading some of those picks. But there's a few centers that I really like that I'm wondering may be available in the 22 range that Shane, I'm going to start with you. I want to throw 3 names out there, and I want you to talk about them and let me know if, I can see where you have them ranked, but the chances they would get to number 22. And those 3 guys are Braden Coots, Cole Reshny, and Jack Nesbitt. I was hoping you could talk about those 3 guys.
Sure. I mean, off the top, I had Braden Coots at the highest spot there, and I say this in the most complimentary way. Like, what the Flyers need are more bastards, and Coots could end up being the best third line center in this entire draft class. Once it hits, honestly, from my perspective, once it hits to about 18, everybody there is going to be a third liner or fourth liner. Like, the probability is going to be in that direction. There's always some guy who rises above the expectation of the probability, but realistically, they're all going to be third liners. So who's going to be the best one? And I think of the 3, Coots provides, Nesbitt's gritty as hell too, but he provides the skating ability that Reshny and Nesbitt don't have. He's the better skater of the 3. He's equally as tenacious as Nesbitt, but doesn't have Nesbitt's obviously massive size. And he has matchup ability. He can produce supplementary points. Like, when I say an elite F7, I mean, you look in the playoffs and go, God, I wish we had him as our third line center, right? Because all of a sudden you could have Luchanko, Martin, and Coots down the middle. It's like speed merchant with playmaking ability, and then back-to-back bastards. Like, what you want going into Philly is, I don't want to play Philly tonight, man. It's a Tuesday night. And I just want to go to Old Town and have some beers and have fun with the guys. And we got to deal with these 2 animals in the middle of the ice, because that's what it would be. And Coots would be able to be on first unit penalty kill. And what that could do is Mark could end up taking some of the second unit penalty kill, keep Luchanko away from the penalty kill, right? Even though he would be adept at it, and to save him for offense, right? And then save Martin for matchups in the defensive zone. So as Coots is the primary number 1 penalty killer, and then he can match up defensively as well, but supply secondary offense. I think because of his skating ability, he trumps the other 2. So as I get to Reshny, now Reshny is not tall, but he's built like a fire hydrant. So and his dad's a bodybuilder. So the kid is going to be strong like a bull. Again, I think he's a little bit more offensively talented than Coots. However, when that translates to the NHL, I think they'll pretty close to even each other out. He doesn't have Coots' skating ability. He's a little bit, he's not a plotter, but I say he's an average skater, but really highly intelligent, like a very smart player in terms of his hockey sense. And he'll have the ability to take away and create some time and space. I think offensively, he can end up creating a little bit more as a third line center than Coots, but Coots will bring some other elements to his game that'll will make up for that, and then some. And then there's Nesbitt. My only concern with Jack Nesbitt, and he's a prototypical big third line center, is his wheels. Like, he's just got to get to average. If he can get to average skater in the NHL, the rest will make up for it, because he is a mean SOB too, and he's 6'4". He's going to play probably at 220, and he's going to be a load in the middle of the ice. So it's really, if I had the choice between two players, I'd take Coots first and Nesbitt second. And I'd have Reshny third, because he's more of a, I'm not like, he will play defensively and you know, he will battle, but I think he's more of the point producer of the three. And I'll take the guy that is going to be able to match up more effectively 5-on-5, particularly on the road. So that gives Brady, that would give potentially Brady Martin that break, so they can be a 1-2 punch. So you see Bennett and Anton Lundell, same thing, same kind of mindset in that, is so that they can play off each other, but they also give each other a bit of a break. So it isn't just one of the three is like that. You got two of them, and then you got Luchanko buzzing around because he's so fast and causing disruptions. They wouldn't be a very fun trio to play against at all.
So of the three guys, I had the least views on Nesbitt. What I saw, I didn't like him enough for the first round, but I understand Shane's right about a lot of those things. He could be in it because of that. I wouldn't take him in this spot, though. I don't think there's enough offense there. Coots I have as the highest rank, to be fair. When I asked him about being a pain in the ass on the ice, he said that was his third best trait. That won me, man. That was a good thing. But then I spoke to Cole Reshny, who I also liked. And if it was based on an interview, Cole Reshny I would rank him higher based on the interview, because I already liked him. I already thought that, yeah, his speed could get better, but I noticed that he would score a lot in the middle of the ice. And I asked him, "You going to be able to score in the middle of the ice, moving up?" And he said, "Yeah, because he sees when that opportunity is there. He is getting strong. He feels like he'll be able to do it." But then when we talked about the Flyers interview, he gave me the entire Flyers marketing plan, word by word, what their future plan is, what they're going to do, what he would love about it, and everything else. So he is fully invested on becoming a Flyer. And it wasn't just like speak, like, you know, hey, his agent told him to do that because maybe he can go a few spots higher. It wasn't like that. Matter of fact, it was one of the more impassioned pleas for any player about any team other than maybe Martone and the Blackhawks. So it would be a coin flip for me for Coots and Reshny. Two different players. I think Coots is the higher floor, and I think Reshny is the higher ceiling. But I think they're both excellent players. And that's just a good player. I just don't. I don't have enough on him to say the same thing Shane said about him. Shane has definitely seen him more than me, so I defer on that.
Reshny's a better playmaker, and he's a primary playmaker in the middle of the ice. Coots is, I'd say, more 50-50 than anything. So goal scoring to that may tip to Coots, because that's his first thing is to shoot the puck in that respect. And then Reshny's his first instinct is gonna pass. So it really depends on what you prefer in that area.
Right.
But the other thing with Reshny is he's not the biggest guy. He's not tall. He's 5'10". So you got to defend.
Travis connecting, and he talked about connecting. Same
right,
thing.
but connecting's on the wall again, right? So are you moving Reshny to the wall, right? So if that's where is he going to end up going, because he doesn't have the greatest wheels, so he's not. Like, if he's an average skater and he's a primary playmaker and he's 5'10", you worry about taking away time and space in the middle of the ice. So if you don't have the speed, you better have the range, right? You better have the long arms and the height to take away some space to make up for that lack of foot speed. So that concerns me about. I'm not entirely convinced that Reshny ends up playing in the middle of the ice, and he may end up going to the wall. So my preference.
Oh, I don't disagree.
That's why my preference would be Coots.
He's still going to attack the way he plays the same way, though. But he might still be a winger.
He's a playmaker because he's by far a primary
yeah.
playmaker.
I mean, we see how Konechny is. He doesn't just stay on the wall.
So Russ, that's really interesting. I'm glad you kind of shared that insight with the Reshny interview. He's a guy that I think Coots will probably be gone at 22. Reshny's a guy who I don't know. I'm just kind of drawn to watching him play. And from Shane, you said he's kind of, he's built like a fire hydrant, and his dad was a bodybuilder. Are there any? Is there any similarities between him and a guy like Logan Stankoven at all?
No, because they don't have the same skating base.
No.
Okay.
At all. Like, that's part of the problem is, like, if you're going to be a smaller player, I mean, it's great to be built like a fire hydrant. However, when the talent pool compresses and you're an average skater and you're 5'10", can you cover the middle of the ice? You can get away with it in junior. And it like, especially the CHL and the USHL, you're playing against 18-and-a-half-year-old players. So when you're that talented, you can get away with a lot. You can mask a lot. When that talent pool compresses to the American League and again to the NHL, and you can't defend in the middle of the ice because, one, you don't have the foot speed, or two, you don't have the length in terms of the range, that becomes problematic because your hockey sense can only compensate so much for that. You could be in the right place. So that's the date. Like, and look, I'm not dumping on Reshny because I have him 22nd. So it's not that, but it's also, if I'm picking between those players and what's best for the organization, I'm trying to look through the lens of the Philadelphia Flyers and not just what my list is, because they're not necessarily one. They're not one and the same.
Yeah. Isaiah, did you add something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I got the answer. So I already had on my sheet, according to Instat, Reshny was at 56% on faceoffs. But again, he could still be. You know what a couple guys told me? No, but hold on. What a couple guys told me was, and this is what Reshny could do, there are games when the center is having an off game on faceoffs. He could take some faceoffs, even if he's playing on the wing. Guys do it all the time. And so I had 2 or 3 guys tell me about that, and I do believe that happens in game. Coots was 51%.
I think, Isaiah, you wanted to ask about Roger McQueen. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, risk mitigation is a big deal with the draft, especially the higher up you are. But I wanted to get from each one of you what your opinion was of, like, him at the combine, how you felt, how well he handled the explanation of the pars fracture versus another type of spinal injury, and how well that went off, and what kind of impression he made, and did that possibly move him up your list, or what was your impression?
I could start with this. I got some detailed information from the medical reports on him, so that is not going to it's not going to re-injure itself. It's not going to be a problem in that respect moving forward. However, it is something that he's going to have to monitor and maintain. And what's probably most likely to happen is that he'll have to have maintenance days and miss games. I would project that he's going to miss probably 10% of every season on average. Just managing that, especially when he gets older. So you could be anywhere, 74 to 76 games a year, barring any other injury, of course. So that's not an issue. If he didn't have this back thing at all, he's in my top 7. Not a problem. The only reason I moved him to 14 is only because I had to take into consideration how many games do I think on average, based on, and I talked to some doctors about this as well that work in this area, how many games, what's my risk mitigation of that? And I go, okay, 10%, 5 to 10% is probably pretty fair over his career of his prime. Forget the early part, really 24 to 31. So it's the only reason why I dropped him to 14. It had nothing to do with his abilities. Just that at the end of the day, you have to take that into consideration. And you got to look at your organization. If this is for Philly, do you want to deal with that again? Like,
No, I don't think they do.
I don't think they want to deal with that.
No, I will say this though. I did speak to a few doctors too, and then when I heard, while he did go through everything, he also talked about how he had to go through a lot of stretching to be able to go through everything. And I just had flashbacks of just an easy guy was for me, David Wright in baseball. Now he had a different back injury. You know, his was spinal stenosis. It's different, but his was even more severe, and he had to work out like 2.5 hours before a game just to play a game. And that's why he eventually retired. I don't know what's going to happen to Roger McQueen when he's 30 years old. Like, you look it up online, and there's potential for flare-ups and things like that. So I think Shane is right. And Shane matched, I think we probably only matched on 3 or 4 players. We matched on McQueen because I also, and I'm more risky than Shane, but I looked at it and said there's too much risk to take him in the top 10 for sure.
So, all right. So we go down to the Flyers also are going to have 31 or 32 if they don't trade. You know, I guess we should talk about the Flyers' probably biggest weakness is lack of organizational depth at center, but they also kind of have an issue with depth in terms of defense prospects. I think that would be their second area of interest. Are there any defensemen, you know, that maybe at 22 or 31 that you think that they might look at guys that, and Shane, I'd like your opinion on, I'll just throw a couple guys out there. Let's Blake Fiddler, Henry Brustowitz, Cameron Reed. Talk to me about those 3 guys.
Well, I would just scratch, and there's nothing against Cameron Reed, but for the Philadelphia Flyers, I'd scratch him off the list. They're not going to want an average or a below average size defenseman. They have too many of those already. They have way too many. Now, if for some reason Fiddler does happen to drop down there, I'm not sure that will happen. I'll tell you the reason why I think it won't happen is there's not a lot of D that you would consider that are going to play top 4. And Fiddler, you could reasonably project he's going to be a number 4. I think those guys are going to be gone because there isn't a large number of defensemen, particularly in that top 35. Where this is where potentially at number 22, Henry Bruscevich could be there. Fiddler could be there too, but Bruscevich could be there. And what I think of Bruscevich is when you have a number 4 defenseman, sometimes it's really nice to have a safety blanket. Like if you look at my scan report on him, everything says this: good, 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 across the board. He's not a specialist. He's good at everything, but not great or elite at anything. So he really is a generalist as a defenseman, but he's a guy who can play in a lot of different situations. Other advantage is he's going to be 6'2", 6'3", well over 200 pounds. And he's a good enough skater. Skating's not going to be a problem. He's going to be able to take away time and space, and he plays for the London Knights. And they have a really good track record of developing defensemen, and their 2 top defensemen, because he didn't get a ton of minutes. This actually happened with Shea Weber a long time ago with the Kelowna Rockets because he had top defensemen ahead of him. Both of the top D-men, Dickinson and Bonk, are gone. They're not coming back. So he's going to get top pairing defense minutes all next year and the year after that. So it's going to elevate his development curve in that respect. And I think that's where he's going to shine. I think a team is going to be really happy with taking Henry Bruscevich in a range. Now, it's the choice of if you're sitting there and you could take Coots or Bruscevich. Do you take an elite potential F7 or do you take the D4? That's a coin flip between that two. You got to win down the middle of the ice, but you got to win with D2. And then you're thinking, is there a D that you could potentially swing at the end of that first, or could you get a third line center? Is there a Cole McKinney there or a Milton Gastrin there as another third line center? So that's a curiosity of that. Fiddler, I don't think he's going to be there.
No, I don't think so either. I think you're right.
I think there's going to be teams that scoop up the Aitchisons and the Boumedians and the Henslers and the Fiddlers before 22. Like that grouping of D is going to get scooped up and gone because there's just not as many D. Because it quickly after, I think, Berskevich and Reed is a 4-5. It gets into number 5 defenseman real fast. The rest of the group are all 5s and 6s. So
that's true. Here's what I would add. I mean, the Flyers spoke to McKinney. If you look at like 2 episodes ago, Locked On Flyers, I put a difference of what McKinney looked like, and I sent the picture to Shane, what he looked like in January, what he looks like now. And it's a big difference already. I a guy that they would like. I think he plays a really good all-around game. Terrific penalty killer, one of the best in the draft, and that is something the Flyers definitely would be looking for in the future because they don't have a lot of guys that can penalty kill besides putting up some points, and he could put up points. I do believe in Bruskevich as well. I think that's a possibility. But I think that if they didn't take a defenseman there, they did speak to Carter Amico, and they have all these second-round picks. And I do think, even though Shane's right about where he might play, he's a tantalizing guy for them at 235 pounds. I asked him point blank about his injuries, and he said, every team grilled me about that. And he showed them all the x-rays. Like they all saw the medicals. And so he believes that he's in the clear on that. If that's true, that's a guy who I know I had at the bottom of the first round early on, but then he kept getting injured, so I took him out. You never know. He could go at the end of the first round. He can go maybe on their second round pick, depending on who they go. They like Jack Murtagh as well. And he's probably going to play on the wing. And that's a guy who does have offensive talent, even if he's a third liner, but I think he could be a second liner on the wing. He had a good interview with him too. He's with the NTDP. And so that's another guy who I think could be in play too. But this is, Shane would admit, once you're at this point, this is like a real wild card spot. Like there's probably 4 or 5 guys you could look at easy, maybe more.
Well, this is the danger part of the draft. 23 to 32, if you look at the percentages historically, I call it the danger zone. There's only a 50% chance of getting a player to play 200 games. It's a coin flip. So this is where if you're here, Philadelphia, you're sitting at that 22 spot. I don't want to tell I would be perfectly comfortable telling them, don't be risky. Take the safe pick. Take the safe player. Get a player. So if you think you can get a third line center with your last pick, but you don't think you're going to get the defenseman, then maybe you take Berskevich at 22 and you wait for a guy like Milton Gastrin. If he's there, there's another gritty 2-way centerman, or a Cole McKinney. So they'd actually have a better chance of getting a third line center at the end of the first than they will of getting the defenseman that they think can be a number 4 defenseman at the end of the first.
So, all right. So I think Chris, obviously, probably all these things are going to go to hell when the actual draft arrives. But if we say that with number 6, the Flyers, maybe end up with Frondell or Brady Martin or O'Brien, then let's say they get their London Knights. We know Keith Jones loves the London Knights. He's one of Dale Hunter's best friends. Let's say they end up with Berskevich at 22. So they've got a center, and then they've got a defenseman, and then seems like there's a number of forwards who could be an option at 31. I want to ask about one guy. I know that elite prospect.
Oh, you're saying 31. So you're saying the Panthers are going to win tomorrow. I mean,
31 or 32. 31 or 32.
Oh, all right. I'm just.
But
he
but you know what's
on
funny?
that like a
When
panther.
Shane was talking
He did.
about how
He backpedaled quick.
I think Shane was talking about with Denoye, and this is just a total aside, but Denoye is almost always on the right side of the puck. It seems to me that the Florida Panthers, one of the keys to their success is that almost everyone on their team is always on the right side of the puck. They've just sort of like built a team that does that.
They don't cheat.
No, they don't. They don't cheat at all. I want to ask about a guy speaking.
Shane said something. I got to tell you, I'm just going to stop you for 1 second. Shane said something about Anton Lundell that is 100% true. And Bill Zito, he drafted him with the mindset of him being a shutdown guy, even though he has this offensive ability. And he has been great in that role. Like, fantastic.
The only reason he's not a second line center right now and putting up 65 points a year or 70 points a year and shutting guys down is because there's another center in front of him. So,
Yeah.
and Sam Bennett. That's the only reason. If he's on another team, he's a second line center all day long. So
I know the Flyers did ask about him a couple years ago.
yeah, good luck getting him out of there. That ain't gonna happen.
Once Bill Zito got there was no chance he would ever leave. He'd be, as long as Bill Zito's there, he will be there.
I want to ask about a guy who Elite Prospects has at number 27, and I don't think that, Shane, you had him in your top 32, but he's a guy that interests me because I see a little bit of like Tom Wilson in him, and it's Shane Vanzaghi, Michigan State, big power winger. Can you guys talk about him a little bit? And he seems like a Flyers type of guy.
Well, he certainly is in terms of his size and his makeup and how he plays the game. He's going to have to work on his feet, get a little bit quicker and get off the ball. But I projected him, and now I had him at 34. So I project him as an F8. So he's your middle player on your third line. Up and down, north, south, does all the dirty work. When you're in the playoffs and you look at those third lines, those heavy third lines, that think like Mason Marchment. That's the kind of player he could potentially turn into. So do you want that? I would still, because of their lack of depth at center in their organization, I'd still focus towards the middle of the ice, particularly that. I mean, if you're going to go get those kind of forwards, the Vanzagis and, potentially a Murtaugh, guys like that may slide a little bit, even a Nesbitt. If you're going to look at that, that might be that first pick in the second round if you don't trade it away. You could probably get him there instead, and I'd go take the center first. When in doubt, I'm taking the center. So if Milton Gastron's there, we haven't talked about him. You want to talk about a gritty two-way, think Michael Backlund. Would you want Michael Backlund on your team as a third-line center in the playoffs? I would. He's that kind of player. So it'd be Gastron and McKinney would be the guys, if they're sitting around at that last spot, I'd have some serious conversations about both those players. And at the end of the day, I'd take Gastron over McKinney if I had the choice.
I would say this. I agree with Shane, and I hate to agree with him all, more than a few times, but I do. And here would be like a luxury pick. If you were a really stocked organization and you needed this part, take him. He was the best in grip strength, right and left. You look at him and he's built. When I mentioned the Flyers with him, his eyes lit up. That's, it's the team that he definitely would love to play for. I'm pretty sure of that. But when you watch him, Shane had some good points about the foot speed. I saw him as a young guy. Remember, he's really young. He's 18, but he's a young 18. He only turned 18 a month or two into school. And so when he switched over, and so he lost some puck battles on the wall, that'll change. But I question how high the offense is on that. And so McKinney, I know, will score more than him. I know Murtaugh will. But again, I think Murtaugh may be a luxury pick there too. I still would have to go with the center here.
Okay. All right. I know we're pushing on 90 minutes now, and Isaiah, I don't know. I think Shane and Russ have really given a lot of great food for thought for Flyers fans. I don't know if Isaiah, if there was other stuff you wanted to go over, or
we can go over those second round picks, trade them all, right? If you look, man, you got so many holes in your organization, and an average second round pick only has a 40% chance of producing a player to play 200 games. And look, I'm a prospect guy. I like draft picks, but if I'm the Philadelphia Flyers, I'll keep my first 3 firsts. And if there's an opportunity to upgrade and get a defenseman and then get another forward with and trade both all 4 second round picks, I wouldn't even blink an eye. Because I know everybody will say, oh, you gave up a second round pick. You gave up a 40% chance of being successful on average. There's a 60% failure rate. 60%. I'll take the guaranteed NHL player for that second round pick. Go back to what the Blues did and doing those offer sheets. You gave up a mid-third round pick for Holloway.
Oh, they stole him.
It's just a steal, right? You gave up a mid-second for Broberg. Who cares? Take my picks. And this is coming from a prospect guy. So, yeah, I mean, the only other consideration at that right at that end, and no, Russ and I didn't mention it, is potentially taking the goalie there.
Yeah, Ravensburgen's a possibility. He
Yeah.
did speak to the team.
Yeah.
No question.
And because it's rare to find a goaltender that I like. Ask Russ, how many goaltenders do I put in my first round? Almost never. Almost never. And I just, because I have him at 32, that's a possibility too. If you're not going to trade some of your seconds away, you can mitigate that a little bit there as well. If you think you can get a third line center at 34, that, you know, in that range, that early part of that second round, then you may consider going center, defense, goalie, third line center, trade the rest of your seconds, right?
Here's what I would say, just to translate this for South Jersey people. So basically, Shane is saying, pull a Mike Ditka, get the suitcase, pack it up, go to White House Subs for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then come back to the draft.
Yeah, 100%.
I could use a White House sub right now. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, we all could, man. If I had a choice of what I ate for dinner, which was really good, or White House Subs, I go White House Subs.
yeah.
Believe it or not, though, I would sometimes just get their chicken parms. I know everybody went for cheesesteak. Sometimes they're chicken parm. I worked in
Parm
a
sandwich.
for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Their
Oh,
Italian
yeah.
hoagies
Bang
are
it.
really good too.
Oh no, it's sick.
Just one or two other things. The Flyers have a little bit more comfort than other teams with Russian goalies, Russians in general. So is that also a possibility in the second or third round if they don't trade? You know,
There's a Russian goalie who's on the London Knights. How more
Medvedev.
perfect could it get?
Medvedev, yeah.
Now, we'll play the scenario out. They're gonna keep all their seconds. They're not gonna make any trades. They're just gonna run the gamut, and this is gonna be their prospect draft. And then the following year, if they want to make trades, they can do that. That's when you turn around and go, okay, let's take, you know, forwards that have some offensive upside but have a B game. Let's take a swing on a goalie in the second round. Like, that's the advantage you have because you have 4 second-round picks before 50.
Yeah.
And I think the draft falls at 50. So you're just under the wire of looking at guys like, you know, Amico, as he mentioned, Charlie Trethaway is in that.
Yep.
This is where also, because if you mitigate your risk up top and take guys that have a really high floor, say through your first 3 picks, even your first 4 picks, that's where you can swing. If you want to swing, take one of your seconds and make a swing and not necessarily be totally conservative like I normally am. That's where you can throw in a Mason West. Like,
the quarterback.
Yeah, because why
No,
not?
I don't
right?
want him. You know why? Come back when you're focusing solely on hockey. What if he gets hurt playing football? Then you've just lost a whole pick. Like, I know the chances aren't great anyhow, but he gets hurt in football, and then all of a sudden he can't play hockey. You just wasted a pick.
Well, I mean, they could go skiing and get hurt, and they do that, right?
No. But quarterbacks get hurt. They do.
I'm not necessarily.
saying.
In the conversations I had, and understanding his full commitment was the reason why he was staying in for high school was specifically to play high school hockey with his buddies and football with his buddies. Once it hits November, end of November, he's going to USHL full time. He's leaving.
We'll see. We'll see about that. I don't know about that. I mean,
Like,
you
he's
might
not
be right.
he's not a good enough quarterback to, like, what, even if he gets a Div 1 scholarship, it's not going to be a good team.
I mean, Donovan McNabb wasn't a good enough quarterback either, but I mean, you never know.
Okay. I'm going to play the odds instead of never know, because that's what Russ likes to do. Russ likes to say, oh, but it's possible. Hey, man, it's possible we're both going to grow our hair back and look like, you know, George Clooney, but that ain't going to happen, right? So
I will mention
let's
something
go
about
back to
Trethway.
reality a little bit.
There's always
That's
decent
funny. I'll
amounts.
mention
I'm sorry,
something
go
about
ahead.
Trethway. Trethway is one of the younger guys in the draft. He trains with Charlie McAvoy. Those are 2 really good things because I don't think we've all seen even close to the best of Charlie Trethway yet either.
But anybody out of that program, we haven't.
Right.
Did you guys happen to notice, and Dan, I think you'll find this really fascinating, all the kids who left the program and went and played college hockey this year all had a spike in their growth. I mean, big
Colin
spike.
Potter. Yep.
All of them. Every one of them who left early and could have stayed but went to college early, all spiked.
Yep.
And it's a concern about like what happened the last 2 years with the program and guys not really taking their game to another level more than they should have. And we try not to put expectations on players because that's through our perspective, and that's not always necessarily accurate. We all have biases, but like to say, yeah, we can say it's a down year in the program, but what's the root cause of that? And then are we punishing the players unfairly for what's going on with the program? Like, is it a coaching thing? Is it a training thing? What's going on?
Somebody may have told me the root cause. So for elite prospects, I give them anonymous scout quotes. And one of the quotes was that the program is playing, they have these guys playing for the medals, not to their strengths as players.
Yeah. And so they're undermined in terms of what we see on the ice. And this isn't the first time. Like, I remember, it's a great quote I got from Rick Dudley. And he said, I'll go to a game and I might not be sure about the player, but I'm damn sure about the coach. So I always have to be really cognizant not to blame the player if the coach isn't using the player, utilizing him properly and putting him out in situations that benefit him and using the player's strengths to that advantage. Sometimes it's not the player. Sometimes it's the coach. And I no longer at this stage give benefit of the doubt to the coaching staffs anymore. I used to, and it used to come back and bite me. Now I don't. It doesn't mean I immediately say the coach is bad because I don't do that, but I take a long look of what the player is, what his behavior and his habits are, and then I take a look at the system he's playing and what the coach is asking him to do. Because the player has to do what the coach asks him or he doesn't play.
If the Flyers are in the mid-teens, a kid that I would really find interesting is the kid, I think he was the youngest regular in college this year, was on BU, Sasha Boumedienne, the defenseman.
Yeah.
I know, Shane, you had him, ranked pretty highly. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I think look at a similar player like Broberg. So his whole game is predicated on his skating ability. So he's going to be able to skate, take away time and space and create time and space with his skating. He's going to be able to transport pucks. He's going to be able to just break up plays because his body and his skating ability, and he's going to be able to get a stick in the way. That's how he's going to defend. And one of the things sometimes that happens with college players and particularly with European players who play pro is they get picked on and maligned unfairly at times because people will look at the CHL and go, oh, look at all these gaudy numbers. I'm like, sure. They're playing against 18-and-a-half-year-old boys. And college players, you're an 18-year-old freshman or a 17-year-old freshman in Boumedienne's case for most of the year. He's playing against 21-and-a-half-year-old young men. There's a 3-year difference on average. That's massive. It's massive. So for him to come in to a huge program like BU and hold his own in that regard says something about his skating ability, his hockey sense, and that just gets better. But the other thing he's got to consider is he's going to get pushed along a little faster. He's not going to last any more than 3 seasons, and he's gone. But I think he needs to play a couple more years because he's still quite raw in some areas, but certainly a player I would take in those teens. I wouldn't even think twice because I like my mobile, lanky defenseman. Take away time and space. I'll take him over the forwards any day.
I like him. I have him ranked, I think 20, 21, something in that range. He didn't interview well, but I think I know the problem with that. I asked him a question. I can't remember the question. And he didn't give me the right answer in the sense that I didn't think he was understanding exactly what I said. So I asked it again a little bit differently, and then he really nailed it about his game. So I think maybe he's not great with interviews yet because he probably hasn't had a lot of exposure with that. And so maybe even at BU with all the other stars they have, he didn't interview a lot. So I just don't think he was he doesn't know how to interview yet. But his play on the ice, I really like.
Well, the other discussions that came out of particularly international play, yes, he has a Swedish passport. I don't consider him a Swede because he has lived in North America and all over the world consistently. I would consider him an American, to be honest, with a Swedish passport. So when you're going to an international team like Sweden, and all those kids and all those coaches have grown up in the Swedish system, Swedish culture, from like age 5 all the way up. like their school system, their culture, and their country, how they run their club systems. And a guy comes in, and for all intents and purposes, he's an American Bohemian. So then you just have a different mentality about how the game is, what like culturally who he is. He's an odd duck in that grouping. And I heard some rumblings about how he fit into that group, and I don't blame him for that, because that's just he is who he is because of where he grew up, and that's just the nature of it. So if I hear anything from the sort of the Swedish contingent, I take that with a grain of salt in that regard.
Okay, well, I'm just going to get one last question. Russ, I was just going back and forth a little bit with your partner from Off the Post Radio, Anthony Mingioni, and we were, I think, another player, I don't know if it was Jackson Smith, committed to Penn State, and it just like this is all the rage right now. And I know, Shane, you referred to it earlier, and I said to Anthony, it's always a shame that Luchanko had signed his deal when he did, because it'd be a prime. He'd be getting so much more if he played a year in the NCAA, because he's too young for the AHL. And as I was thinking, I was asking, like, could he go to Europe? Could the Flyers loan him? I mean,
he could. I don't think they will. This is the problem when team organizations, not just the Flyers, but organizations are in general, are too impatient, and they want to sign their players immediately. And it wasn't like this wasn't talked about prior to the draft. Mike McMahon and I talked about this for 6 months straight, saying this is going to happen. And people thought we were nuts in the beginning. And by that draft in Vegas, we knew it was coming. It was a matter of time. So what was the point? Like, what was the stress point where you said, oh, we have to sign Luchanko? I would have said to Luchanko's camp, hey, we want to – it's not that we don't want to sign you, but we want to see how this NCAA thing plays out. Because if you are too good to play in the CHL, but you're too young to play in the American League, this may be a really great option for you. So let's wait 6 months. And if this doesn't materialize, we'll sign you and we'll just go on about our day. But let's sort of play this thing out first. That would have been my communication to Jet Luchanko and his agent, and saying, hey, we just want to be patient because we want to give Jet as many options in development as possible. So then he goes from playing against 18.5 players who he's going to absolutely dominate against, and then to go play against young adults. It would have been such a great advantage. But there's always this fervor of like necessity to sign these guys right away because that's what everybody else did in the past. Who cares what everybody else did in the past? Like, that's not relevant.
Right.
Because the past doesn't always necessarily reflect what is necessarily the good decision in the future. And you knew it was going to come. I don't understand it.
Yep. It's self-inflicted wound, maybe.
Yeah.
And
put the pressure on Guelph and get him traded. That's what they have to do.
Yes, 100%. Get him to London.
Yeah. No, it's true. And you do that, that's his best year of development, not with the Flyers.
I agree. Keep him out of the Flyers. He's not ready. I don't like. He's a great skater, and he's a very good playmaker. He's too young. You want to ruin a player? Like, you don't have to do it yourself to learn a lesson. Go look at Kokniemi. What happened to his trajectory? Look what happened. Look what happened to Sam Bennett. Look how long it took him to get there. It took him a long time because he was in
languishing for years.
Yeah, too much too soon. How many centers, or like, we'll use centers as an example. How many centers got pushed in that were, say, top 15 picks that got pushed in too much too soon at 19 and just never made it because they missed that opportunity to continue to experiment. They needed to go through that experimentation phase before they get into a heavy structured system. They need that. And you don't get that if you're thrown into the wolves, because you have, like, when you get thrown into the NHL, you're in survival mode. Like, so everything you did in junior, you can't do. You have to retreat to the most basic of you. And then you don't evolve during that time because you're just trying to survive. So if I see Luchanko in a Flyers uniform, he's playing the whole year, that makes me cringe. I'm like, that may not turn out well for the Flyers. And then you're right back at it again a few years later, having to replace Luchanko in the draft class because he's going to end up being a speedy third line center instead of a smart playmaking two-way center with speed. Like, what do you want here? Because we see this happen all the time. Kirby Doc, Chicago. There's no reason for him to be in. He came from Saskatoon to the NHL and was way over his head, and now he's struggling.
But he was big, Shane. He could handle it.
Oh yeah, that was I'm like no, and his game never materialized. So now he's a skilled third line center who's having a hard time trying to figure it out. The Flyers, it's a really critical decision. It could completely undermine having 3 picks. If you lose Luchanko because you're too impatient, then you might as well just wipe out that second first round this year because you just lost them. Because that just you have to mitigate that asset. This is a really delicate time for the Flyers. And if I was in their shoes, I'm going patience and conservative with every pick. And just get players. And
that's not with every pick, for most picks.
Yeah. That brings me to my next question for Shane would be this. A couple of years ago, you were on our show and you talked about how, it doesn't always have to be a first line center, the structure of a team is all built up. Now, is that pertaining to the Flyers? And half the league, you said it on the show, less than, half the league, 15 teams have a true number one center. So what is it? I guess the Flyers have to take that route where we might have to have 3 number 2s and 1 number 3, to actually get our rebuild going. Is that the best thing?
You can do that. Look back at how the Vegas Golden Knights built their initial team. They ended up having 2 number 2 lines and 2 number 3 lines. They didn't have a number 1 and they didn't have a 4, so they were compacted to the middle. And what allowed them to do is have greater matchup ability, particularly on the road and at home, but on the road too as well. So what the Flyers could do is have 2 number 2 centers and now have 2, and instead of having this typical 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4 line, why do you have to there's no rule says you have to build your team that way. You could end up, because of where you draft and the multiple picks they have, they could build out 2 number 2 lines and 2 number 3 lines. Don't have a 4th line. Have a bunch, because you have all these second round picks. You could end up having 2 number 3 lines that are just bastards to play against. And then you have 2 really strong number 2 lines. Now, are you going to lose a little bit on the top end of overall skill? Yeah, you got a potential superstar in Michkov, so he'll give you that instantaneous offense, but you can surround him with guys that are just wave after wave of I don't want to play against these guys. Because you never have to worry about playing a 4th line 10 minutes, 9 minutes, because you got 2 really strong third lines there. And you can do the same with your defense core, because it's unlikely you're going to get a number 1 D. What you could do is have 4 number 3s and 2 number 4s. So you don't have a 1 and 2, but you also don't have a 5 and 6. And you smash them all to the middle. So then you could play them each 20 minutes. And the best guys that play on the power play are on the power play. And the best guys that kill penalties. The Flyers could end up playing it by the aggregate, basically being the Oakland A's of the NHL. Play to the middle.
Oh, boy. There we go.
Let's build our team to the middle.
Money puck. That's it.
But with less stupid decisions in terms of analytics when you're basing it on a lagging measurement only. Can't do that. Not, slight shot to the analytics people out there from a guy who uses analytics every day.
Well, Chet, we gotta wrap up. We're coming to the end of the show here. So I mean, you guys are going way overboard, and we really, really appreciate it. Russ, let me start with you. Where can people find you before when they're looking for your work?
Sure. Sportsology.com, NHLDraftBuzz.com. It's my draft site. Elite Prospects and my new book, Game Winners, at Amazon.com.
You got it. Thanks for joining us tonight. Shane, thank you so much for taking your time and giving us all that valuable knowledge. where can people find you?
Easy. It's on SiriusXM NHL Network Radio, Hockey Prospect Radio. This weekend is part 4 of our draft preview. So we actually did it light this year. So we only did 14 hours of draft preview overall. So yeah, we previewed 24 prospects, 10 minutes each. And then we did 4 draft preview shows. So show number 4 is this weekend, but you can listen to all the shows as well on a SiriusXM app. And if you want to see my list, that's at hockeyprospectradio.com. And there's some blurbs a little bit underneath that. Some, not the full scanner report, because that'll make you go blind. You'd be reading all day. But there's a little bit of a summary for each of the players that are in the top 65.
Fantastic. We're going to wrap up some business for the show. And so we're going to let you guys go. Thank you again. And
thanks, guys. You
Thank
guys
you.
hope to see you soon
was
down
awesome.
the road.
Thanks for having us on, gentlemen. It was great. Love to be on your show.
All right,
Thanks,
take
guys.
care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
Okay. Well, you heard the men. Dan, thanks so much for handling that. That's your bailiwick, as they say.
Yeah, it's going to be fast. I mean, you know, I did a show with some of our compatriots.
Flyer going to flyer.
Yeah, Alex, Eric, Jamie Basco over the weekend. We did a little mock draft. I mean, it is mock draft season, and it's really going to be fascinating to see what direction the Flyers go, because there are these, you know, Brady Martin. Do you want Mike Richards? Do you want Mark Savard? Do you want to take a shot with Anton Frundell? I mean, there's you know, just Porter Martone last. There's a lot of different possibilities, and some interesting players that the more I look at it, you know, they're going to be available at 22 and 31 or 32. So it's it's fun to think about, and it's going to be great to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if Frundell's there, I think they would definitely take him. I still stick to wanting skill at that position. I think the whole team learned how to have that attitude under Tortorella, and this is a skill draft. I know it goes against what Shane has exponentially greater knowledge than I'll ever have, but I've watched Mel Bridgman and Rod Brindamore, really good player, and Mike Ricci and guys like that. If you don't have the Forsbergs, the Lindrases, or the skill guys to get you in the playoffs, you're not going anywhere. So
Ironically, Isaiah, wasn't Mel Bridgman the only number 1 pick the Flyers have ever had?
Yeah, they traded for him.
Yeah.
Right. They traded Bill Clement right after the 75 Cup, and it was not a great year. Mel Bridgman was a really good player, don't get me wrong, but he was kind of like a 2.5 seat.
Yeah.
He actually had his best years in a wing, I think, in Calgary or New Jersey. Yeah. So, okay. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about Jay Verady, who is added to the coaching staff, kind of taking the Darryl Williams role. And Michkov was 4th officially in the Calder voting, 11th Flyer named overall to the all-rookie team. So he joins a pretty prestigious list that included Ron Hextall, Lindros, Yoni Pikkinen, Shane Gostisbehere. So the Flyers also added Noah Cates for 4 years at $4 million per. So before we go, and I read the last announcement, are we going to Game 7, or is Florida going to wrap it up tomorrow night? Chef, you go.
Well, Florida's going to wrap it up tomorrow night, I think. I think they, you know, I don't know, somewhere in the late mid-second or mid to late second period last night, I saw the spirit of the Oilers break. So, I mean, I picked Florida to win anyway, so it's not that I wanted to go 7 games. And at this point, I wouldn't care who wins, because all of these games have been like really fun games to watch. So you couldn't ask for a better Stanley Cup unless you're invested in it. And I'm not. So, but I will say Cats tomorrow night. Tight game, maybe even overtime.
Okay. Dan?
We're going to Game 7, baby.
Love it.
Got it. I think the Cats are going to wrap it up. But I can't argue. I can't say Dan's wrong. The way this thing's been going back and forth, we'll have to see. So you can follow the O&B Puckcast on several podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon Audible. And, of course, we're on YouTube and Facebook. All you have to do is plug in there, type in there O&B Puckcast, and we'll pop right up for you. If you could follow or subscribe, whatever applies to your platform, we really do appreciate it. It helps move us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcasts. You can follow Dan. You're at DSilver88 on X and Blue Sky. Is that right?
That's right.
Correct. And it's at Chef to the Left B on X. And you can follow the O&B Puckcast at O&B Puck at O&B Puck on X, Blue Sky. We're also on Getter at O&B Puckcast at O&B Puckcast. And with that, everybody, I hope you enjoyed it as much as we liked recording it. And until next time, which I think is going to be next week, we might have some more draft material for you. Thanks for listening. Take care. Hey everybody, it's Isaiah. Just reminding you that FlyersNittyGritty.com and the O&B Puckcast are brought to you by Summit Public Adjusters. Hey, do you have damage to your home? Not sure who to call? We suggest that you call Summit Public Adjusters before your insurance company. Dealing with your insurance company can be very stressful. Let Summit take the stress out of the claims process. From storm damage to your roof, to toilet overflows, to broken pipes and fires, Summit gets you the most money for your repairs. So next time Mother Nature leaves you in need of repairs, call Summit Public Adjusters at 215-752-0560 or visit summitpublicadjusters.com. Licensed in PA and New Jersey.